What if Robert and Cersei loved each other? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Cersei waits alone in her wedding bed, staring at the door which remains shut. She has little idea what to expect from Robert. She'd only met him a few times, and that was little more than just the occasional glances during celebrations and events. She did recall him during the Tourney of Harrenhal, but most of her attention was focused on Rhaegar. A part of her still resents him for killing him. She still spends her nights thinking about Rhaegar, imagining what would happen if the silver-haired prince triumphed over Robert and the Trident. A part of her still wishes that were the case. But those thoughts are quickly silenced as the doors open and Robert finally appears. He ambles towards the bed, his gait unsteady as he nearly collapses on the floor. She doesn't need to smell the liquor on his breath to know he's drunk. She clutches the sheets tighter and watches as he stumbles over to the bed. Cersei makes no moves to help him, instead simply letting him slump there before crawling into the sheets with her. When he looks up, he has a dumb smile plastered on his face while he cups her cheek. Cersei stiffens and makes an effort to present herself to him.
Lyanna.
Cersei's entire body stiffens as she hears that name. The other woman Robert was meant to marry before her. It was said she was the last casualty in the rebellion, and the reason it began. When Robert heard of her death, he was grief-stricken and refused to marry. It was only because of Tywin and Jon Arryn's prodding that he finally agreed to this marriage alliance. She stares at him, wanting to be angry as bile builds in her throat. It would be so easy to slap him and call him a fool. She doubts he would even remember that in the morning. And yet, Cersei instead takes a moment to think about it, to consider how she feels now. She didn't want this marriage any more than him, and her mind drifts towards Rhaegar and what could have been if he lived. After that, her thoughts go to another gallant knight who made a name for himself during this war. Yet his name will live in infamy. Jaime. As she thinks of all that and glances at Robert, she finds her anger fading. Rather than hating the man, she finds herself pitying him and perhaps understanding how he might feel. The simple truth is the realm might see them as king and queen, but they are both grieving now. She lifts Robert's chin as he slumps over and shakes her head.
I am not Lyanna, and you are not Rhaegar.
Robert blinks in confusion, his eyes squinting as he tries to focus on her. For the first time, he looks at Cersei, truly looks at her. Only then does he see who he is dealing with. His face flushes, both from wine and from shame, before dipping his head.
I am not. Is that who you wish I were?
I do.
And bloody hell, this marriage is going to be a disaster.
Who knows? You've managed to surprise everyone by not getting yourself killed during this rebellion.
That I did. Bloody hell. Can't believe I'm saying this, but I don't think I'm in the mood for all this. Not if you're going to think of Rhaegar this whole time. What was he to you, anyway?
Her face reddens, but she still describes him as she sees him in her dreams, how she feels when she sees him in court. Robert listens at first, but then snorts and dismisses it. The images she conjures up of his gallantry and gentleness do not stop the fact that Rhaegar still abducted a girl and made her his prisoner, and even if he didn't, he still allowed her brother and father to pay for his actions. When Cersei speaks of this sadness within him, she describes the sadness in his eyes. Robert dryly remarks he was more happy to allow that suffering to bleed out and affect the rest of the realm. Perhaps the wine is what loosens his lips, but Cersei counters and reminds him that Lyanna still went with Rhaegar, that she was probably disgusted that Robert fathered a bastard. She reminds him that all of that was done not because Lyanna consented, but because Rickard wished for stronger ties in the south. All of those words were meant to hurt Robert, to upset him, and they work. Shock flickers across his expression when he hears it, and then hurt. Cersei initially takes satisfaction, but it isn't her words that sting him. It is the realization that all of this was true, that the illusion he had built up in his mind simply didn't exist, and that leaves him hanging his head as his chest heaves. When she sees this, Cersei pauses and feels a momentary lapse of guilt. She meant what she said. Hurting Robert so deeply was unexpected. Biting her lip, she places a hand on his shoulder.
So in the end, we are in the same place. An arranged marriage that a wife didn't want, and you, king of the Seven Kingdoms. I suppose we both got what we wanted, just not as we intended.
I've heard the Stannis refer to that sort of thing as a monkey's paw.
The two of them sit in silence for a long moment, with the only sound coming from the flickers of a dying fire in the hearth. It is difficult for them, but the silence is even worse. Slowly, the conversation begins to filter back. The two of them speak of Lyanna and Rhaegar, talking about what they admired about them, what they imagined their lives to be like. In that regard, they speak in great detail. What they cannot do is talk about them, what they did like, what were their interests, and what they did want. Slowly, the two realize how little they know of the loves of their lives, and when Cersei and Robert look at each other, there is a new understanding between them. Before they even realize it, the sun is coming up, and it is morning. Robert groans and sinks into the sheets, realizing he has not gotten a wink of sleep, but he knows that Jon Arryn will soon be there to escort him to the throne room. And yet, when he looks at Cersei, Robert offers a smile.
Suppose it would be an eventful way to start the realm. As for this, I enjoyed your company, Queen Cersei. I won't be opposed to it another time.
I suppose I feel the same way as well.
The next night, Robert returns with a flagon of wine for the two of them, and the two spend the night talking. Though many are expecting them to consummate the marriage, the two are simply discussing matters. They speak of their fathers and brothers, their times traveling the realm, and what they expect during this marriage. They learn that they are not so different, with one of their biggest commonalities being a shared love of alcohol. The conversations are heated, some things turning into arguments, but there is no venom. It was a marriage that neither of them wanted, but it has still been laid before them, and they resolve themselves to make the most of it. Though they never have the passion they felt for Rhaegar or Lyanna, love begins to blossom between the pair as they spend more time together. Robert makes efforts to accommodate his wife, controlling his drinking when he is with her and making sure to invite her to sit with them. He even teaches Cersei how to handle a bow. Meanwhile, Cersei begins to view Robert as closer to a husband. She does not think ill of him and makes an effort to ensure smoother cooperation with her house and Robert's court. Most surprisingly, she begins to reduce her visits to Jaime's chambers, though she still occasionally sees him. Against all odds, their marriage proves to be a happy one, as the two grow rather fond of each other. None is happier than Jon Arryn, who breathes a sigh of relief. While he had planned this marriage for purely political reasons, his old heart swells upon seeing that Robert was still able to find some happiness despite losing Lyanna. As the realm settles into peace, Jon Arryn takes a leading role in administering the Seven Kingdoms during its day-to-day practices. Although he had long tried to teach Robert about administration and governance, the truth is that Robert never fully paid attention, and this leaves him having to learn on the job. Whenever petitioners and dignitaries arrive, he must sit back and watch as Jon handles it. He does have a second student in the form of Cersei, who at least appears eager to learn, as such lessons were long denied to her by Tywin. This gives her a chance to have a say in how the realm is run. Because of that, many believe it is a similar situation to the time of Aerys, where his hand did most of the ruling, albeit with far smoother cooperation, as Robert has complete trust in Jon. One place where Jon does take control is in appointing new members of the small council. While he agrees to grant Renly and Stannis positions in the government, Jon also offers a seat to Lord Peter Baelish, a promising administrator from the Vale who made a name for himself as a tax collector. As Littlefinger looks around the court, it would appear that the Seven Kingdoms at last know a peace it hasn't enjoyed in many years. But underneath, he knows such a thing is fragile, and that offers opportunities for him to rise. Far in the corners of the realm, there is dissatisfaction, as in the south, Dorne stews at the wrongs suffered in Robert's rebellion. The death of Elia still burns bright, and a second rebellion was just barely stopped, but they never forget and slowly withdraw themselves from the court. Meanwhile, in the north, Ned Stark is also wary of Lannister's rise to power. He also condemns the actions of Tywin Lannister, but is willing to cooperate due to his old friendship with Robert. In the meantime, he must play the part of the obedient servant. Yet over time, the realm enjoys more developments, as the union between Robert and Cersei soon produces two children. The first is a dark-haired girl named Bara, who inherits her father's booming voice and broad shoulders. The other is a light-haired boy by the name of Laenor, who grows up long-limbed and willowy, with his mother's grace and bright green eyes. While Bara soon develops an appetite for combat, favoring the warhammer and following her father to the training yard as soon as she can walk, Laenor favors the longbow and occasionally practices with his mother. However, the two spend more time enjoying balls and plays rather than fighting. All the while, Littlefinger slowly amasses wealth for himself. As master of coin, it is easy for him to forge business ties and sell positions in government to enrich himself. He indeed ensures that the treasury appears healthy, but for every 2 gold dragons he puts in, he keeps 1 for himself. More importantly, he reaches out to Tywin Lannister and offers his advice as a business partner. Whenever a goldsmith requires raw materials, he helps him secure it straight from the mines of Castle Rock. If a ship needs to unload gold, it finds itself in Lannisport, and if it requires a loan, Tywin Lannister soon meets with it. All of this leads to a bold plan by Littlefinger, where the crown shall create a royal bank in the Westerlands, with Lord Tywin being placed in charge, while Littlefinger handles the investments. This gives the Master of Coin even greater access to wealth, as the mines of the Lannisters are open to him, while tying whatever happens to the Great House. Within years, Lord Baelish secretly becomes one of the wealthiest men in the realm, all while maintaining an appearance of being a simple tax collector. Yet over time, the royal bank begins to buy up interests in countless businesses across the realm. Ships, mines, farmlands, anything that might make money. The royal bank of the Seven Kingdoms grows like a dragon hoarding treasure, its reach spreading far beyond the Westerlands. What began as a modest institution tied to Casterly Rock now buys up fleets, vineyards, timber yards, and even granaries across the Seven Kingdoms. Soon, even merchants of the free cities begin to feel the squeeze. In Pentos and Bravos, in Lys and Volantis, whispers circulate of Westerosi gold shutting them out of markets they once dominated. Traders mutter that the Seven Kingdoms no longer need their ships, nor their loans. The royal bank has taken hold and provides that for them. Petitions soon arrive in King's Landing. Ambassadors claim the free cities will not tolerate being pushed aside. Robert listens with half a grin and a full goblet in hand, while Cersei sits beside him on the throne, her face cool and dismissive.
They are jealous. They ruled the seas and the markets for generations. Now they must share the table. Of course, they squabble.
Let them whine. We've coin enough, ships enough, steel enough. If they don't like it, they can bugger themselves. This is our realm, not theirs.
The free cities leave dissatisfied, but not defeated. When Robert wears the crown, it is Jon Arryn, the Hand, who truly governs the realm. Jon senses the storm before it breaks. Quietly, he begins to investigate the royal bank's holdings. He asks questions no one else dares. Who truly profits? Where does the gold flow? Which signatures appear again and again on contracts hidden in the crown's ledgers? It is just as Peter Baelish intended. The deeper Jon looks, the more the lines blur. He sees Tywin Lannister's name, but always alongside others. It appears as though the Lannisters are buying up critical infrastructure to dominate the realm. While they do provide wealth, they also have undue influence, as many of the bank's leaders are friendly with the Lannisters. He begins compiling these reports, warning of too much influence in the realm and suggesting that some members be removed. These are moderate enough demands, yet he never makes these findings public. One evening, after dining with the king and queen, Jon Arryn returns to his chambers with a strange wariness in his chest. His breath shortens, his heart pounds. The magister hurries to fetch a draft, but no leech, no prayer, no polis can help him. By dawn, Jon Arryn lies cold in his bed, the last words on his lips, a desperate whisper for Robert, and in the silence that follows, Peter Baelish smiles. With Jon Arryn's death, there is now a vacancy in the office of the Hand of the King. Robert grieves his fallen mentor, but understands the need to act, especially as the free cities grow more restless. Cersei initially suggests her father, Tywin Lannister. However, even Robert recognizes this is a step too far and politely declines. Instead, he turns north to his old friend Ned Stark, whom he offers the position. Robert makes a great show of journeying up north to Winterfell, where he visits Ned and offers the position. At the same time, Lysa Arryn secretly sends Catelyn a hidden letter that warns them of Lannister ambition. While he is initially pleased to see Robert and Cersei laughing and sharing stories, his expression darkens as he receives this letter and begins to see it in a new light. He wonders where the lies begin with that. Yet it also means he cannot deny the offer for fear that his friend is getting trapped in this net. When Ned arrives in King's Landing, he immediately sets himself to work, looking at what Jon Arryn was investigating. Curiously enough, the report he intended to provide to Robert is missing, as if someone had stolen it. This leaves the new Hand struggling to pick things up from scratch. One thing that becomes apparent as soon as he arrives in the Red Keep is how dominant the Lannisters have become. Everywhere he looks, he finds the blonde hair of Lannister kin and the crimson of their uniforms. They are there amongst the squires, the maids and servants who tend to them, even among the stewards. He first starts looking through the places where Jon visited, seeing the shipping facilities, lands, and granaries that were built using the royal bank. All of this gives the impression of prosperity and wealth, but when he speaks of their owners, they all present the same thing. This is all due to the generous loans from the bank. They describe how they met with Tywin or his bannerman, or Littlefinger. And not far away, there are also complaints from the foreign merchants, who are slowly being priced out of their traditional trading territories. They bring up their grievances with Ned, speaking of how the crown favors local traders, how loans are more difficult for them to obtain, and how they no longer feel welcome. These merchants urge Ned to help represent their interests and insist Jon Arryn was a friend of theirs.
Lord Baelish, it seems your project with the Royal Bank has created deep roots. Well, it helps that we have deep pockets, Lord Stark. Tywin Lannister has proven to be a generous benefactor. Half of our purchases would not have been possible without him. That much is true, although it is something I find curious. In my experience, wealthy men are not often keen on parting with their gold. Yet, he has spent hundreds of thousands of gold dragons on this endeavor. Lord Tywin has often said that it is unwise to place all your hopes in one gold vein. I am not one to question a man with that much wealth to spare, although I suppose he wished to diversify his wealth. Diversify it where? Farmlands, ships, smiths, mills, wherever the gold is meant to be made, I suppose. Much to the chagrin of our trading partners, Westeros is a land of opportunity. My grandsire believed as much when he left to serve the Seven Kingdoms. No doubt many of these merchants thought they would find themselves to be lords, only to find competition. Though, if you ask me, being a lord is not all people make it out to be. Still, I would not lose too much sleep over these merchants.
In the end, Ned tries to bring these issues before Robert and the court to try and make them see the need for some reforms. Yet these pleas fall on deaf ears, as they see no reason to try so hard and appease them. Worse still is that his children do not seem any more receptive to the idea. Bara has little interest in these matters and is not inclined to support them. Laenor, though interested, is not planning on seriously supporting them. This leaves the merchants with few allies, save for Ned Stark, who proves to be less than capable of getting them what they want.
I see those merchants have gotten to you, Ned. Best be careful, or they might talk your ear off. This is no joke, Robert. These merchants are a big part of what keeps our realm fed. We cannot afford to alienate them.
They were once what prevented our realm from starvation, but that is no longer the case. We have strengthened the realm so that we must not remain as dependent on them as they would like. I see little problem with that.
Is it truly the realm that is being strengthened, and not just a few?
Are you trying to imply that my family is enriching ourselves through this bank? If that is the blade you wish to strike at me with, then go right ahead. Yes, I do not deny that my family profited from this bank. Any family would be. Are they deserving of such scorn because they make a few gold dragons? Besides, my father rebuilt our house from near ruin. Surely that speaks to his competence in running this bank.
A few gold dragons are not my concern. The head of this bank is Tywin Lannister. The key holders are those who serve under him, and those who have long had ties with your house.
A bank is like a council, Lord Stark. It does not function if everyone spends their time arguing with each other instead of acting. My father is not afraid of criticism. If these key holders find fault in him, then they gladly bring it up.
Unfortunately, my wife speaks truly. Not unless you can provide proof that there is reason for me to remove Tywin Lannister. Do you have evidence suggesting that he is proven incapable of handling this task, besides a few angry merchants? Only the fact that the Lannisters dominate the court. They dominate your finances. Do you wish for them to dominate this matter as well? Ned, my house is small. I have only my brothers and a few cousins. I need more than that to run a kingdom. But my point stands. Until you have evidence, or find someone better than Tywin Lannister, I see no reason for any changes.
The failure angers many of the Free Cities, who see Ned as impotent in handling this matter. So instead, they turn their efforts further abroad. The remaining Targaryens continue to wander the Free Cities, and to many, they are little more than a curiosity, the remnants of an age-old dynasty now gone. However, with recent developments in the Seven Kingdoms, they begin to see them as a way to move forward, a potential new regime that can replace one that does not represent their best interests. But soon enough, Ned gets his chance. A report appears by Ned's doorstep, the same report Jon Arryn wrote, and the courier is none other than Darkstar, who offers Ned a wry smile.
Lord Stark, take this and remember one thing. The North isn't the only one that remembers.
As he unfurls the letter, Ned's eyes widen at what he sees. It is the findings of Jon Arryn's investigations, but not quite how he intended it. Although Darkstar claims that Dornish spies stole the report when Jon Arryn was murdered to prevent it from being destroyed, the truth was that there were intermediaries in between, agents of Littlefinger who modified these same reports, switching details. From Tywin simply buying out the goods of failing merchants, there are now claims that he intentionally dropped prices to drive them out of business. There are falsified documents that suggest the Free Cities had already threatened blockades and even military action, which Tywin failed to report, and how money meant for the bank was funneled into personal projects. All of this ends not with the removal of just a few corrupt agents, but all key holders. So, as Ned reads it before the small council, the situation gets worse.
This was written by the late hand of the king. Lord Arryn feared the royal bank had become the tool of a single house. He warned of danger, both within and without, and he urged the crown to strip Tywin Lannister and his agents of all authority.
Forgery. Lies meant to smear my father. You dishonor his service to the realm by speaking them aloud.
The words bear Arryn's hand, and the truth of them is plain for all to see. The Lannisters strangle the realm with their gold.
It is true, sister. One need only walk the streets of King's Landing to see red and gold on every merchant's door. Perhaps your father sought not to serve the crown, but to replace it.
How dare you?
Enough! Old friend. Did you mean to have me cast Tywin aside on the word of his report? The Free Cities are threatening war, and you would have me cut off our finances on the eve of battle. I would mean to end this war before it begins, your grace. So long as he remains head, they will not be satisfied.
Lord Stark speaks true, your grace. My little birds sing of unrest across the narrow sea. Bravos, Pentos, Lys. They see our bank as an iron chain tightening around their necks. There are rumors that they may even search for a new ruler.
The harbor of Pentos is thick with banners that do not belong to Drogo's Khalasar. Galleys and cogs from Lys, Tyrosh, and even Pentos itself line the piers, their decks crammed with armored men. Daenerys stares in awe from the prow of her ship, her silver hair whipping in the sea breeze.
Armies. They come for us.
The Royal Bank of Westeros has stripped us of our rights and wealth. House Lannister chokes our trade, but House Targaryen once brought prosperity to both sides of the narrow sea. We will see them restored.
Viserys swells with pride, puffing out his chest. Daenerys watches more cautiously, but even she cannot deny the sight. Thousands of spears, sellswords hardened by years in the disputed lands. Days later, their fleet lands in the shadow of Sunspear. Dornish riders greet them with raised spears. Prince Doran watching from his balcony while his brother greets them. Oberyn smiles and already reports having supply caches prepared for the army's crossing of the Dornish desert. Yet these do not come freely. He first demands that Viserys honor an old marriage pact and wed Lady Arena. At first, he is incensed by these demands, but once he sees the Dornish beauty, he quickly changes his tune. With that, the army begins marching out. Hearing this, Robert begins to make preparations for the war, and yet his council hesitates. They do not immediately rally to his side, first demanding that they replace Tywin Lannister.
You will have the north, Stannis will bring the fleet, and Renly the Reach's strength. But first, we must deal with the rot at the heart of the realm. The royal bank cannot remain under Lannister hands. It divides us while the enemy gathers.
Cersei's fury is plain, but the coalition has grown stronger since Jon Arryn's damning report. Lords discontent with Lannister influence begin to side with the Starks and Baratheons. Hightower men from Oldtown, Manderleys from White Harbor, even Blackwoods and Tullys.
Sir Humphrey Hightower has long managed the Bank of Oldtown. That should pacify the angry lords.
I know the man. He's a banker of little ambition beyond keeping clean books.
So be it. Tywin steps aside. Sir Humphrey takes his place. The war comes first.
Cersei's eyes flash like daggers, but she cannot stop him. When the meeting comes to an end, she lingers where she is, and Robert notices.
You are angry with me.
You are the king. You should command them to listen
It
to...
is not that simple, Cersei. Things have gone too far, and with the Dothraki at our door, I cannot risk alienating them now, at any time. The only way we can survive this is by standing united. What I wouldn't do to be out there instead. This kingship is just like our marriage, Cersei, thrust upon me. Except for our marriage, I had you.
You do have me. Now and always.
Then, do you trust me? Trust me enough to believe I'm doing what I think is right?
I do. Now give those horse breeders hell.
Banners rise across Westeros. Robert leads the charge with his warhammer, his daughter Bara at his side. The young princess focuses on crushing rebel houses that rise up in support of the Targaryens. Stannis commands the fleet, his discipline driving men forward with iron resolve. Renly rides at the head of a glittering host. Being the lord of the Stormlords, he takes Rhaegar with him to block the passes and bottle up the Dothraki, while Stannis aims to cut them off by sea. Yet, along the Boneway, fighting becomes brutal as both sides clash with swords and spears. The Dothraki hemmed in by the mountains and forced to rely on the Dornish and their sellsword allies instead. These men clash with Stormlanders, whose host occupies the passes. Renly takes command atop one of the bluffs. The fighting is fierce, and his men shove hard to force them back to the Dornish deserts, where heat and a lack of supplies will do them in. Yet, while he might have the numbers, Khal Drogo and Oberyn appear behind enemy lines, accompanied by Daenerys, whose appearance inspires the men. With a surge of energy, they press forward and smash into the Stormlander lines, which slowly buckle back. For a moment, this attack falters as Sir Bryce Caron rides forward and rallies the men, cutting through a swarm of Dothraki, but he is soon cut down by a sudden charge by Oberyn Martell, who rides down the cliffs. Sir Courtenay and Renly manage to regroup and buy them time to escape in the marches. But here the Dothraki are at least free to spread out, forcing them to fight the hard way. Robert soon arrives with his army, and in these initial skirmishes they fare well. The king remains strong, and his hammer crushes the unarmored Dothraki riders foolish enough to get close. He is careful to avoid favorable terrain, and never falls for their feigned retreats. For a moment, it seems like enough, but victory always slips past them like water. Ships fail to arrive when needed, grain stores vanish in disputed towns, pay for mercenaries runs short at the worst moments. The great machine of war grinds and stutters, not from the enemy, but from within. In the shadows of King's Landing, Peter Baelish counts his coins. Though Tywin has been stripped of the royal bank, Littlefinger has spent years weaving himself into its foundation. Every missing loan, every delayed payment, every accidental shortfall tilts the balance, bleeding Robert's war effort dry. Cersei does not take things well when she hears this. They were told that Tywin's removal would put an end to this and help their chances, but as she sees Robert's war effort struggling, she questions who is truly at fault for the floundering war effort. Yet, her complaints are drowned out by the growing chaos on the battle lines. With their efforts to block the Boneway over, they must fight the Dothraki across the open plains. They first spread out in the Stormlands, but Robert's defenses prove more effective here. The wooden terrain and poor weather make it difficult for the army to advance, and Robert's experience in the region allows him to hold it. This forces them to cross over the Reach, and some reach as far as Highgarden and even the Crownlands. Though these are scouting parties that are easily wiped out, it adds to the chaos. The Khalasar follows Drogo's lead, burning through the fields and striking against the villages that cross his path and slaughtering any army that tries to stand in his way. Robert is careful to shadow their army, while Renly and Stannis reinforce the cities and walled towns, which must only contend with the sellswords. Bara takes command of the defenses of some towns and personally walks amongst their lines, hammer in hand, as she waves to the people. This makes it essential to hold an order to allow the small folk a place to retreat to. Laenor rides through these ranks, bow in hand, as he escorts bands of refugees to safety. He's accompanied by Sir Courtenay and teams of archers and shield-bearers to create mobile defensive positions when they encounter the Dothraki. Viserys takes the lead, burning his way through the Reach to advance towards King's Landing. He waves his sword and urges his way forward, burning and destroying anything that gets in his way. To prevent his crossing, Ned begins to set up defenses in the Riverlands to prevent the Targaryen army from crossing the Trident and reaching the Crownlands in force. The Blackfish sorties from the border regions and attacks any encroaching forces, while Stannis sends raiders from the sea to halt their advance. However, Oberyn Martell has planned for this day since the death of Elia and prepared his moves accordingly. The sky above the Riverlands burns red as the Dornish host advances. Oberyn Martell rides at the head of his spearmen and archers. Behind him, sellsword banners snap in the wind, while the Dothraki screamers fan out across the plain. A volley of arrows arcs high. When they fall, they bite deep, and men collapse, gasping, their skin greening where the poison tips pierce. Northmen stagger, their shields slipping from nerveless hands. Riverlords clutch their throats and retch black bile. Westermen cry out as the venom takes them, their lines buckling. Through the chaos, Oberyn smiles grimly. For Elia, for her children. But then, the horns of the stag sound. Robert Baratheon thunders down the line with his warhammer raised. Cersei close by as the royal couple arrives to rally the soldiers.
On your feet. By the gods, you Lannister men, Stark men, Tully men, are you going to die on your knees? Stand with me. Stand with your king.
Something stirs in the poisoned soldiers. Men with blackened lips and bleeding eyes rise again, coughing, staggering, yet they march. Adrenaline momentarily overcomes the poison in their bodies. Shields raise, swords trembling in their grip. 100 surge forward like corpses dragged from their graves. Some cough up blood as they march. Others let out inhuman screams as they sound like men with one foot in the grave. And yet they rush on, their infected bodies carrying them forward. And that's when the dead men are marching again. The Targaryen forces, who were victorious just a moment ago, now find themselves fighting for their lives as their enemy revives. Yet Baratheons won't surrender. No, instead striking fear into their foe. It's the attack of the dead, 100 men, facing their deaths once again. 100 men, charge again, die again. The sellswords falter, the Dothraki screamers reel back in horror as these dying men, too far gone to fear death, smash into their ranks. The charge crashes through, hacking, clawing, biting, until the plains are choked with blood. Panic takes the mercenaries, and for the first time, Drogo himself pulls his riders back. A victory. Almost. But when Ned calls to press the advantage, there are no supplies, and their lines become overextended, preventing them from chasing down the surviving men. The chance to crush the Khalasar slips through his fingers. That night, Robert slumps in his tent, hands trembling as he drains yet another cup of wine. Outside, those brave men who charged the Dothraki lines are being buried with full honors. But he cannot face them, not when they failed to achieve something. Cersei kneels beside him, pressing her hand against his.
They will speak of this day for generations. I have already heard some bards calling it the attack of the dead men. They found strength because of you, Robert.
And yet, even with that strength, I cannot lead them to victory.
You cannot carry this war alone. You'll kill yourself before you kill them.
Sometimes I wonder if they were right about me. These issues. Did I allow them to happen? Is all of this my fault?
I do not know of this. All I know is that I was there when you agreed to these proposals.
Yet, I wear the crown. I know it because it becomes heavier every day. Sometimes I wonder why I still keep it.
Yet as they speak, Ned Stark sees not just a drunken king, but a man buckling under the weight of his crown. And he sees Cersei, caring for him, holding him tight through these struggles. He wonders, perhaps Cersei's love for him is not feigned. But the war is bleeding them dry, and Ned's suspicion sharpens. He looks again through the ledgers and finds the pattern. While he leads his troops, he spends nights looking through these patterns, finding the places the Lannisters purchased, and then he sees the finer details. Tywin's name may be signed, but every trail of gold leads through another hand, Peter Baelish. The men working them are hired by him, and the supplies are provided by his allies. Always Baelish.
By the gods, it was never Tywin.
Soon after, Robert orders Littlefinger's arrest. Guards drag the Master of Coin from his chambers as Sir Humphrey Hightower takes up the ledgers. Within days, the truth spills forth. Forged accounts, vanished loans, bribes paid in secret. Littlefinger had not just enriched himself, he had sabotaged the war effort to keep Robert weak. But even with Littlefinger exposed, the war grinds on, and supplies that have been sabotaged take time to repair. Armies clash, fields burn, villages starve. Robb, Ned, and Stannis agree. They cannot win by swords alone. There must be a change of tactics, and while they are generals, they need a politician. At long last, they deploy Tywin Lannister, who travels to Essos to begin negotiating. They start with the Iron Bank and lay out terms. Withdraw their funds to the Targaryens, and they will allow permanent advisors among the keyholders to ensure their interests. Not only that, but they will pay whatever loans the Iron Bank had given to the Targaryens. The Iron Bank deliberates, cold and calculating, but the promise of oversight and the sight of Baelish's crimes exposed convinces them. Support begins to wither as the Iron Bank leans on these other groups to reconsider their allegiances. One by one, the Free City bankers pull away. Loans dry up, mercenary captains pack their spoils and sail home. Merchants and trade princes find generous repayments that cause them to reconsider. The Dothraki remain, but without pay. The sellswords drift like smoke in the wind. Daenerys watches this unraveling with quiet fury, while Viserys screams and stamps his feet, demanding to march anyway. In the camps, the Dornish grit their teeth, realizing their foreign partners are slipping away. The war is not over, but the tide has turned. Still, they cannot rely on their supply lines and must end the war quickly, lest it swing back against them. So instead, Robert orders all armies to attack, aiming to end this war before it drags on any further. From the north, Robert leads the attack alongside Ned and Jaime Lannister, who muster their forces from the Riverlands and Westerlands. Though the Dothraki have pulled back, they now fully sweep the field and gallop forward. The banners of Stag and Wolf, Rose and Lion blaze across the fields of the Reach as they wipe out the surviving Dothraki and Dornishmen who linger too close to the border. Word soon spreads, and Khal Drogo musters his army in response. Meanwhile, word is also sent out as Laenor opens the Marcher Lord castles and rides alongside Renly, looping around and cutting the Targaryens off from the rear. On the coast, Bara also rides out with an army carefully reorganized by Stannis and stiffened from survivors of previous clashes, as well as levies raised from among the refugees. Alongside Sir Loras and Garland, Bara hammers her way through the sellsword lines. Her army aims to join up with her father's further north. They already see dust clouds in the distance as a result of clashes between Jaime and one of Drogo's blood riders. He buys time for Drogo to retreat and gathers the rest of his army, Dornishmen and whatever sellswords remain. They assemble not far from Bitterbridge, where the three armies convene. The battle rages for hours, fire and steel staining the fields with blood. Oberyn's poisoned arrows fell on many royalists, but Robert rallies his men again and again, his booming voice rising above the din. Bara and Jaime both lead lightning strikes against their army, trying to cut gaps as Robert and his cavalry smash in. Meanwhile, Renly forms a defensive line to the east, providing room for Laenor and his archers to rain fire upon them. The Dothraki fight savagely, but without gold, their sellsword allies falter, and one by one, their captains break and flee. Drogo himself leads a countercharge, meeting Robert's forces head-on. He cuts down to the Kingsguard before attacking the king himself. The Khal darts from side to side, using his superior agility to avoid those hammer swings. He rolls forward from the attack and sweeps his blade, scoring a long cut against Robert's breastplate. But rather than letting him move away, the king bull rushes him and knocks the Khal to the ground. As he lies there, Robert raises his hammer and brings it down. When at last the horn sounds, the enemy scatters. Robert drops to his knees in the mud, exhausted, covered in gore. He has won, but the victory feels hollow. Still, with Drogo defeated, his Khalasar scatters into the four winds, leaving only the Martells to fight alone. But instead, they sue for peace. At Riverrun, the lords of Westeros gather under banners of truce. The Targaryens arrive flanked by Dornish spears, Daenerys calm and composed, Viserys red-faced and shouting. The council is long and bitter, but the terms take place. The free cities demand stability, the Martells demand vengeance satisfied, the lords of Westeros demand peace. Meanwhile, Robert decides to make a bold move. He shall marry Laenor to Daenerys, who is the favored Targaryen of her faction, while Oberyn becomes their new hand. Viserys' rants only deepen mistrust. He is set aside, his instability too plain for any crown to bear. Oberyn's first act is to have Tywin stripped of all power, with Casterly Rock passed over to Tyrion. Oberyn can think of no better punishment than handing over his pride and joy to his least favorite son. Meanwhile, Stannis and Renly are retained as members of the small council, and amends are made to the Free City. Such peace is shaky, and no one is fully satisfied with it, but at least they can all accept it. And then, Robert reveals the rest of his plan to Cersei in secret. Though he will remain king, he will only do so for a few more years, intending to simply train Laenor and Bara to handle this responsibility, and then he plans on abdicating. He already has land set aside for them in the Stormlands. When she hears this, Cersei is stunned. A part of her is horrified, thinking of all the power her family has gained over the years. And yet, when she looks into Robert's eyes, for the first time in a long while, she finds true happiness. She finds herself smiling as well.
Keep wrath, you say? I suppose there are worse places to settle.
That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.